everybody, I'm Cindy V and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the iconic Miss Katy Perry. I did a reaction video recently to her new song, Never Worn White. I'll put the link in the description down below. But it just made me wonder, like, Katy Perry is one of the most iconic names in the history of pop music. And for me, she is the standard for pop girls. When I think of a pop star, I immediately think of Katy Perry, her multicolored wigs, California Girls, Teenage Dream, all of that. But I feel like lately she's been losing respect in the industry, and I feel like people don't give her the credit that she deserves based off of her accolades. And so today we are going to take a look at why and what happened. Katy Perry started her career with the Katy Hudson album in 2001. This didn't really go anywhere, and she really only gained fame with her second album, One of the Boys, back in 2008. Her lead single was the mega epic I Kissed a Girl. Now, in my opinion, the reason the song did so incredibly well is because it was naughty, a little cheeky, and also still kind of conservative. You know, like, I kissed a girl and I liked it, I hope my boyfriend don't mind it. It really played into this image of the all-American girl next door with a little bit of a hint of a naughty side, which I think the public really enjoyed, as well as record execs and other people in the music industry. Then came Hot and Cold, and that is relatable to every single girl there is out there. Then there was Thinking of You and other singles, but I just believe this album, like, all the singles were picked very well and they were released in the right order, and her image also just was very striking. She had dark black hair and those piercing blue eyes. She just came along at the perfectly right time, and she shot up to fame very quickly. Then came her third album, Teenage Dreams. Now, I don't need to remind you how big of a hit this album was. This was the era of Katy Perry and all the colorful wigs, all of, you know, like the candy themed, very colorful, very popping, that fit with like the naughty entendres for adults, but also bright and colorful enough for the kids. It was just Katy Perry is a very all-inclusive brand, and it was also very all-American. Also the image of all the multicolored wigs really turned in her favor. Her album cover, and I'll put it up on the screen, was her naked in a bed of clouds. It was cheeky, it was cute. Again, playing into the image of the American girl next door, but now she has turned herself into more of a sex bomb, more of a sexualized idol. This also was more enforced with all of the things shooting out of her chest, you know, California Girls with that whipped cream, and also the fireworks song with all the, you know, fireworks shooting out of there. California Girls is iconic. She said before that when she heard New York State of Mind with Jay-Z and Alicia Keys, she wanted to create a song that could be for the girls of the West, for the California girls. And I still love that song. That song is still a bop. And again, this third album did what One of the Boys did, which was the rollout was kind of perfect. The singles were picked perfect. I also want to say Teenage Dreams was the start of this crazy music video era with the crazy sets and everything over the top. I feel like her back in 2010 was the one that really pushed this, and the one that really kind of brought music videos to what they are today. Is just bigger and bigger, and the concepts got bigger and bigger too. She also had great songs on the album that were very uplifting and very emotional, like Firework. It was like the entire album just felt happy, it felt good, it felt energetic, and I think the audience, especially the American audience, really related to that. Katy went on tour, the California Dreams tour, and it was like the music video brought to life. It did extremely well, it brought the masses, and she toured for like 2 years off of this album, which is, she got that coin, you know. And in 2012, was the start of her showing more of her vulnerable side and showing less of a Katy Perry and more of a Katy Hudson type of thing through her Part of Me documentary. I still think Part of Me is the top 3 artist documentaries of all time. It was the perfect balance between the showmanship, the spectacularness, but also the personal. I mean, we saw her marriage essentially disintegrating in that documentary. We saw her getting that text message from her ex-husband Russell Brand saying that she wanted a divorce. That was in the documentary, and that must have been so hard to put in there. And I gained so much respect for her. That scene where she's literally breaking down in tears with the microphone, and then is immediately after lifted up into the stage and having this perfect persona. That's just heartbreaking. That's very hard to do. Then 3 years later, after her 3rd album, Prism was released. Now Prism wasn't as popular, I would say, as Teenage Dreams, but it was still massively successful. It spawned big hits like Dark Horse, Unconditionally, and Roar, which was the most viewed music video of all time. This ties into what I said before about her music videos being a very big production and having a very clear concept. Following Prism, she went on tour again to make that point. And that tour was very successful too, the Prismatic Tour. In 2016, Katy Perry headlined the Super Bowl performance. Now, until this day, Katy Perry still has the higher viewership of history. 118.5 million people tuned in to watch this performance. Now, to put that in perspective, the NFL game that year only drew in 114.5, 4 million lower. So people loved Katy Perry, and this is what I mean by she was the all-American pop star. She was the peak of the peak of the peak. Now, after the Super Bowl is where things started to go a little bit haywire, I would say. In 2016, Katy Perry was heavily involved in the Hillary Clinton campaign for president. I feel like she put in her time, she put in her years in the industry, and this was her time to start developing more of her own voice, more of her own opinions to the general public. But you see, and it sucks that we live in this world, but when you start talking about politics, if you talk about one opinion, you will alienate the others with the opposite opinion. And I believe her heavy involvement in the Hillary Clinton campaign kind of made people distance themselves from her in a way. Not everybody, but Katy Perry was known as the all-American girl, as I have stated repeatedly in this video. But when she started to be only on Hillary's side, she lost a lot of, I think, middle America and a lot of the supporters that would buy her music, stream her music, and be completely idolized by her. That kind of started to wear off, you know, the wigs were gone. She was talking about issues that mattered to her, which I commend, but the result of that was her losing some of her audience. 2017 was when she released her Witness album. Now, Witness album is by no means of a flop. It still sold incredibly well, but compared to her own successes, Witness failed to really hit all of her audience. I feel like Katy Perry said it herself in an interview that it was purposeful pop. I still personally don't really know what that means. I think that she was trying to change her identity, change her perception with the public, but it kind of didn't hit. People didn't really feel like they knew her, and the fact that she cut off all her hair and now has a very short hairdo and blonde, I felt like it was such a drastic change, and it was so sudden that people couldn't like evolve and change with her. And so a lot of her audience just kind of felt like, what? Like, this is not Katy Perry. This was also boosted, like this was when like the kind of Katy Perry hate train started happening, and it was majorly boosted by her SNL performance back in May in 2017. it was very awkward. It didn't feel like it had like a pure direction. I felt like she didn't know what she was doing. She didn't know what she was doing with her body. She didn't know what she was doing with her face. And it came off like a fake woke. That's what a lot of people were saying. Around this time was when the Katy Perry and Taylor Swift feud was happening, and Taylor Swift was starting to become like the new pop star. She switched from country to pop, and I think a lot of people who may have been fans of both Katy Perry and Taylor kind of picked a side, which is not so good, but that's kind of what happened. Also, in this era of the album, I feel like the singles weren't picked right. They missed very good songs, and it just felt off. It didn't feel like the right moves were made. It didn't feel like the album had a direction, even though they put so much of purpose into it, you know. Personally speaking, I love Bon Appetit. That video to me is genius. All the food references, but she still looked hot. She still looked sexy. And it's kind of what Yummy should have been a little bit. You know, like if you're gonna play with food and that kind of thing, something that's been done over and over and over, you really have to bring like a new spin to it. Just like kind of Doja Cat did with Juicy. Also, Bon Appetit was just ahead of its time. 2 years later, suddenly the song was starting to get picked up and people were listening and streaming to it on YouTube a lot more. So it was ahead of its time. In this period also, radio stations weren't playing her music because it wasn't getting as requested, because there was this strange Katy Perry hate train. Then came the American Idol judging. I feel like this was the wrong move for her. I mean, it was a wrong move for American Idol. They cut out all the bad auditions and only left in the good ones. It felt like a very strange turn for the show, and they paid Katy Perry way too much. They paid her $25 million for a season, whereas the other two judges got around $7 million. That's a very, very big gap. And I feel like because it was so much money, Katy kind of put the pressure on herself as well as everyone around her to play up her personality, and it felt kind of disingenuous. To perfectly put it, the Witness era was Katy Perry going through an identity crisis. I feel like she didn't know what direction she was heading. She didn't know what she was doing fully. She kind of had an idea what she wanted to do, but she didn't know how to fully execute it. And I think that if she had held off on the album and really figure out the message that she wanted to send, it would have come off much better and less fake woke. Her Witness tour also didn't do as well as her other two tours. There was an 86% average turnout, with some shows going up to only about 70% audience turnout. To put this in perspective, with her other two tours, California Dreams and Prismatic, there was a 98% audience turnout. So it was just, you know, not as good. She was making a lot of money and she's still successful, but she slipped. And in this period, a lot of other people were coming up. There started to be a new sound introduced to the market, something a little bit more R&B, a little bit more chilled, and I think it went kind of against Katy Perry's bubblegum pop. So yeah, I think that's what happened. I think that's what went wrong. But we are not ending on a bad note, because through her quote-unquote failures in the Witness era, she found Orlando Bloom. And she stabilized her own personal life, and I believe that she's much happier now and much more in tune with herself. And the result of that is Never Worn White. I think that this new single and this new song, and the fact that her pregnancy news and everything is garnering the public's attention again in a positive way. And this really could be her comeback and her way back into the top dogs of the industry. I hope for the best for Katy Perry. I wish her the best. I am still here, going to be supporting her 100 1000%. I thought Never Worn White was one of the most beautiful music videos I've ever seen, and it shows that she still has it in her, okay? She still has that spark that people can really relate to. And so yeah, that's all I had to say on that. I'll see you guys on my next video. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys. Mwah.